o'clock, the meeting will come to order. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Ritchie.
Here.
Nordhook.
Here.
Supervisor Westprince.
Here.
Trevor Corson.
Here.
Trustee Nordike.
Here.
Trustee Shipley.
Present.
And Clerk Slater present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Article 3, is there approval or discussion for tonight's agenda?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trust,
Need to amend that.
I'm sorry, what?
Closed session agenda item.
Oh, before we do that, quick discussion. There is a closed session tonight to discuss material exempt from the OMA via attorney-client privilege, but also in addition to that, specifically closed session to discuss pending litigation, Miller versus Cascade, and that would be closed session under MCL 15.2681H, and that was not on this agenda. So with that addition, does your motion still stand, trustee Shipley?
Yes, it does.
Still seconded, trustee Nordike?
It does.
Okay. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Having no presentations this evening, now is the time for public comments on anything that is scheduled for tonight's agenda. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes and also state your name and address for records. Good evening, sir.
My name is Doug Lee. I live at 8613 52nd Street, and I want to welcome the new members of the trustees on the board and appreciate the time that you commit. And so I apologize for not being here sooner to congratulate you. My message tonight is really quite simple. It talks about budgets. We're, as a country, we felt individually that 76 million Americans have been pilfered and our taxes are out of control. And I ask that we take the same measures within the local as they do with the federal government, and we look at our budgets, we place freezes on all expenditures and evaluate and look at where we can get and tighten our budgets and across within the county, in the township. Everybody needs to do their part. It just can't be done on the federal government level. Monday, went down to pay my taxes. I feel like I should have an office in the building. Amount of different properties I own within Cascade Township. And the saddest part living in Cascade Township, I've been here a resident for 35 years, okay, is that my own kids cannot afford to live here. And your kids probably can't either. It has gotten out of control. Okay, most of us are under homestead, so our taxes go up only a certain percent every year. But if anybody wants to buy a house within Cascade Township, they're unaffordable to our youths. And we need to do something about that. And the only way we can do that is not going to be fixed overnight, is we slowly roll back and we start to look at how we're spending taxpayer dollars. From wages to jobs. So I am only suggesting that you might want to follow suit, start your own Doge, look at your budgets and finances and where we can make cuts across the board. And until you get a handle on it, I would suggest that we just sort of set a freeze and follow the federal government. But we need to do this on the local level, the county level, the state level, and the federal level. So we all can do it. But it's this level that affects my life the most. Okay, when I go down to the tax office and pay my taxes. Thank you.
All right, Nick Catsarellis, 2985 Berwick. One of the matters you plan to discuss under new business is resolution number 014-2025. This is consideration of resolutions to approve elected officials' compensation adjustment. And I have several concerns that I'd like to share with you. The first one is the 4 resolutions leave blank what the salary should be. Two, the resolution 6.2025 reads that the board, quote, deems that an adjustment in the salary of the office of Township Trustees is warranted, end quote. This is despite the recommendation from the Personnel Finance Committee that there be no change to the trustee compensation. I support that recommendation since the salary of the trustees is far higher than those of other Kent County townships. Three, according to the minutes of tonight's meeting, the plan is to call for a roll call vote on a single resolution. I would suggest that the four resolutions be voted on separately and that the supervisor, treasurer, and trustees abstain when it comes to voting on adjustments to their annual pay. And finally, you certainly are within your rights to change your compensation by passing a formal resolution. But to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest by voting yourself a pay increase, why not create a local officials compensation commission which will determine the salaries of the board? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to comment virtually? Article 6, approval of the consent agenda. Is there discussion or a motion?
Move to approve.
Support. So motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by treasurer Corstange to approve.
Rissy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Rizzi, supported by treasurer Corstange to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 7, financial actions. I believe we have our financial director, Ms. Nancharini, virtually, who may have an adjustment.
Good evening, Supervisor, Board, Township Manager. This is Lorna Nancharini, and I'd like to comment on the invoice distribution report and request that in your approval of payments that you take out 2 invoices to Kentwood Office Furniture. They are located on page 2 of that report, a total just over $12,000. These invoices were entered and they are waiting for an adjustment. So please, I request that they not be approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, omission of the 2 invoices specifically to Kentwood Office Furniture referenced by Director Nancharini, is there a motion or discussion regarding tonight's financial actions?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the invoices to be paid with the exception of the 2 that were brought up to be deleted.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordike to approve tonight's financial actions with the omission of the 2 Kentwood Office Furniture invoices referenced. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Having no unfinished business, Article 9, new business, item 011-2025, consider approval of resolution for the adoption of ordinance amendment to chapter 282. Specifically, this is the Parks and Recreation areas. This is the second time this has been in front of the board as part of the process for amending an ordinance. Manager Smith, an overview, please.
Sure. So this has been a long time coming. I believe for over a year, this has been discussed at the Parks and Rec Commission. It was introduced to the board, the January 22nd, 2025 meeting. There was some comments and some adjustments that were requested. You can see that those are redlined in the version that you have before you tonight. And also there's a couple other things that really belong more in parks rules as opposed to in the ordinance. You'll see that that's redlined as well. Just to give a brief history, the current ordinances that we have for our parks, there's an individual ordinance for every single park that we have. That includes Rec Park and Tassel Park that were created in 2002, Peace Park and Burton Park that were created in 2010. There are no ordinances for Wycliffe Park, Memorial Park, or Friendship Park. So this is consolidating all of the basic ordinances consolidating all of the consistent rules and regs throughout all of our parks into one ordinance, with each park being able to have its own rules that can be covered under this as well, that would come back before this body for approval. So this is consolidating those 4 resolutions into one, and then also including the parks that were omitted.
I have a question.
Yes.
So then that is going to encompass any future parks.
Yes.
Generally.
Well, we would amend the ordinance to then add that park to this ordinance, which would be a very quick
Right,
amendment. Yep,
in the listing.
correct. Yes.
So by doing this, if it's approved, we're simplifying the management of the parks and enforcement of any problems that we've got.
Enforcement is another issue, but the management of the parks, absolutely, because there were inconsistencies amongst all the parks. As we saw with our discussion at the last meeting, some allowed swimming, some didn't allow swimming, some allowed this, some allowed that. They all had different hours as well. So this is consolidating all of those.
Thank you.
Thank you for the red lines too. That was very helpful.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if Dan is here tonight, if he has any other comments.
No, the only thing I would say is that Sydney from my staff and Jessica from Jade's staff really helped with the legwork on this for us. So I think they deserve credit where credit is due.
And this has been run by, and in fact, edited with legal counsels.
Yes. Yep, they generated the draft.
Attorney Homier, since we have you here tonight and we've gotten, this comes up with residents, can you talk about the township's duty or obligation, or what expectations are reasonable as far as enforcement of park ordinances? We have some residents who are frustrated that the township is not out enforcing certain violations as they occur. And I just wondered, what's a reasonable expectation for the township to take on, and also for residents to expect?
Well, that enforcement is always a balancing act between available resources and availability of personnel. And it's always a balance between those things. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, station an enforcement officer at every park you have to enforce park rules. I don't think that'd be a wise use of taxpayer dollars.
And we wouldn't be able to do it based on anywhere near what we have right now.
Right, but you could do it. And so there's a certain amount of trade-off that goes on based on personnel and tax dollars. And there's a certain amount of discretion you have too in getting compliance versus writing citations, let's say. So, you know, if somebody is violating a park rule, generally the rule is you try and educate them about what the rule is and expect that they will follow it. If it continues, then you kind of ratchet it up and end up writing citations for the violation. But there's no, you know, certainly you can have rules and regulations, the violation of which may constitute a misdemeanor, but it's like everything else. Those enforcement officers generally don't write tickets. They'd rather have compliance first.
What about we've had residents complaining that the township is liable or not doing its duty by not actively pursuing, like if the resident themselves sees a violation and then they're complaining to us, even though the violator who didn't have the dog on the leash or who visited a park after hours, they're no longer there and they don't know who the person is, but their position is that the township is somehow like liable or incorrect in not enforcing that or not following up on that. Is that true?
No, and so liken this to, if you will, somebody steals your bike and you call the police and the bike's gone and they're gone. You'll file a report, but you know, you can't blame them if they don't catch them. And that's just the nature of it. They're gone and you don't have any identifying information. How would you begin to follow up on that person?
What about for safety, public safety in this township? We contract with the Kent County Sheriff's Department like all the other townships do for public safety and law enforcement. So if we do have crimes or different things being committed, is it in our parks? Would that the same rationale apply that, again, we contract through the County Sheriff's Department for law enforcement? That would also apply to our parks?
Yeah, and obviously there are more serious events than others, right? And so again, it's a balancing act. If there's, say, for instance, an assault and battery in a park, it's going to receive more attention than if you're walking your dog without a leash. just by the nature of the crime. That's how it is with law enforcement generally. They have to prioritize based on budgets and personnel as well.
Is there a problem or anything improper with the township or all the other townships in Kent County outsourcing public safety and law enforcement to the county sheriff's department and compensating the sheriff's department for that service?
No, many of our clients have extra duty sheriffs by way of contract. It's not out of the ordinary.
Do we have any obligation to residents to have some additional, I guess, township law enforcement or public safety in our public parks?
Nope. And you don't even have an obligation to contract with the sheriff's department if you didn't want to. I suspect that most jurisdictions do it as a service to their residents, so that they have that extra police protection within the township.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further board discussion or questions, motions? Trustee Rizzi?
I I don't think it makes sense to have 7 different sets of rules for 7 parks. I think consistency is important for the residents. It's important for our staff. And so I think this consolidation of everything into one document works well. I like the edits that were done. And so with that, unless somebody else has further comments, I would make a motion to approve the ordinance amendment to chapter 282 Parks and Recreation Areas.
Shipley supports.
So motion by trustee Rizzi, supported by trustee Shipley and then trustee Nordhook to approve the resolution adopting the ordinance amendment to chapter 282 as presented. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Treasurer Corrstange.
Yes.
Trustee Nordike.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook.
Yeah.
Trustee Rissy.
Yes.
Trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Clerk Slater. Yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes, motion carried.
These are gonna confuse me.
Thank you, Director Zwick and Manager Smith, for your work on that. It was good.
We're good. We're good.
Item 012-2025. Consider approval of award of a 3-year contract for township tree plantings. Township engineer Eric Thorne is here tonight to discuss it. And just for a quick overview, this is a follow-up or a completion to the pathway project along Cascade Road that was started and completed 2019 to 2020, where a large amount of trees were taken out as part of that, but then were not really replaced. So it would be part of an overall beautification and also safety enhancements to the road, but part of that finishing up the pathway project. So with that, Manager Thorne, could you walk us through this, please?
So that is correct. The first project that took out trees along this stretch of road, which is Cascade Road, Wycliffe to Whitneyville Avenue, was the 2019. It was a pathway project that the township had commissioned. It extended the existing pathway that ended at 36th Street, and then it brought it down on the west side of Cascade Road to Cahoon Drive. And I think the pathway took out a number of trees to make room for it, as well as it displaced utilities, who in turn, when they moved, took out a number of trees along that way that were not wholesale replaced following that project. So then after that, in 2023, the road commission came through and they widened Cascade Road for that same stretch of road from 36th Street to down to Whitneyville Avenue. They put a center turn lane in, they put a roll curb and gutter on either side of the road. And as part of that, they took out a number of trees along the way to make room. So we're kind of years later trying to compensate for what we could consider a loss of character along that corridor. A number of trees between the pathway and the road, and then again outside the pathway. But what this project proposes initially is replacing trees within the Kent County Road Commission right away. I had the privilege, I was on site with, you met Jerry Byrne, or we saw Jerry Byrne a few weeks ago with the road commission. Somebody he works with, and you might be familiar with Wayne Harrell as well. I was in the field with Wayne. He took the time out of his day to go out there with me. We drove that stretch of road back and forth a couple times, and he kind of gave me an idea what we could do with trees, what they would allow. and what we couldn't do. By and large, the county has very strict rules about where you can plant trees in their right of way. And that has to do with having to have a legal clear space outside of the roadway. So if a car veers off a road, they don't want a 30-inch diameter oak sitting right there. And in addition to that, you have to look out for utilities in the right of way. You can't plant a tree on top of a water main, for example. And they don't want any trees in the right of way that could impede line sight for vehicles coming out of a subdivision, for example. So typically their rules are about 10 foot back of curb or front of, it's front of curb. And then 250 feet from an intersection. But we went and we looked at some areas where elevations are higher than others. And he said, you could, if you stake out trees here and we review it and we say, yep, that's okay, we'd let you do that. And he said, in most locations, we'd let you get within 8 feet of the curb instead of 10. How close you want to get to your pathway is kind of your call, but they typically don't get within 3-4 feet just because tree roots as they grow tend to displace and wreak havoc on pathways and sidewalks. But so I put together the plan that's included here and went to bid based on those conversations with him and the understanding of what the road commission would approve for us to do. So anything in there, what this does is I basically maximize the capacity for trees along that way. Certainly open to change, nothing is set in stone by this plan. It was basically, let's try to get as many trees as I can that the road commission has already indicated to me would be acceptable. What would end up happening is once this contract is awarded, we have to submit a permit. It doesn't cost anything with the county road commission. They just have to accept, they get the paperwork, they send it back, they approve it. Before we plant anything in the field, it gets staked and they will want to look at it and they'll give a final approval. But this is 39 trees. There are several species listed in here. Some people have very strong opinions about species. So nothing, the quantity wise in here is set in stone. The contractor, we received 3 bids back. The low bid contractor was Horrocks Nursery Farms. I've since had conversations with them since that bid opening, and included in the request here, they provided alternate tree species. There are a certain number in there. I basically talked to them and I said, it's essentially a beautification project. We're trying to build character along this corridor in the township here. What trees do you have that would have nice fall colors, that are good trees to have in your yard, that will be, that will live and prosper along a roadway? So they provided those are in here. Essentially, with the exception of a few cents, I mean, they're the same price as what they'd quoted the other trees at, 404 and some change each for 2 to 3 inch caliber. I also had them submit an alternate for larger trees. Those go up substantially in price. That's the 3.5 to 4 inch caliper tree, of course. Free for your consideration. For the context of the bid here, I would recommend going with smaller trees, but I figured for the sake of comparison, it would be appropriate to show here. And of course, if we want to continue to work with this company as it's being proposed here, that's something to consider in the future, what it does cost to put larger trees in, if that is our wishes somewhere else in the township. Other than that, just looking for approval to go forward with this contract along Cascade Road. The budget, we have a budget for 90,000 to plant trees, so this would come out of that. And then to continue on, hopefully with Horrocks Nursery Farms here in the next, we're asking for, it looks like 3 years for that they can continue to, we'll continue to have that budget line in the budget and then plant trees as needed in the township. Only other caveat I have is it does include watering cultivation for 2 years. So they are responsible to come back several times. It's like once every 3 or 4 weeks, might be less than that in the summer for this summer and next summer. So that warranties those trees and covers them for at least 2 years.
Measure Smith?
I just wanted to comment on the last thing that Eric had mentioned. We're requesting a 3-year contract because when this bid came back, the budget is $90,000 and we know we didn't have any hard numbers to go off when we set that budget. But the dollars are there and I think this is going to be an ongoing effort that the board is going to want to continue year after year. So going out to bid and getting these bid numbers, knowing because it was competitively done, we're asking for the 3-year contract, so we can continue this with this contractor if you see fit to award, to actually fund the line item for the next 2 years after this year. And then also we have additional monies for this year after this project. Even if we go with the larger trees, we still have another $30,000 to do some infill through our parks and other township properties. We are looking at the master plan at Rec Park, so there could be an opportunity to use some there. And then also with the upgrades at Tassel Park, there could be an opportunity. So this will give us an opportunity to work with a familiar contractor that already went through the bidding process.
I wanted to make a comment or explain the funding, $90,000 from the budget. This came up at the Personnel Finance Committee meeting. The funding for this project is coming from, once we had a new manager, Manager Smith, he saw and he's going through, just like Mr. Lee, you talked about, going through all the finances, looking at all the line items, different things. The general fund had about $5 or $6 million in it, which is basically operating for roughly a year and a half, which is on par, pretty normal, but that's general operating expenses. There was a over $3 million fund labeled the IRF fund that we didn't know about and hadn't been brought up in previous budget discussions by the previous leadership. Improvement revolving fund, very generic term. And when we went back and looked at it, it was funds that had been collected by the township for sewer and water hookups. And that had gone up to over $3 million, huge amount for not knowing about it, not having these discussions in public. And the previous leadership, the previous board had taken that and set it aside to put it towards specifically for the purpose of expanding sewer and water along the eastern section of the airport for that industrial development, which then was in partnership with the Grand Valley Metro Council and the additional 4 on and off ramps in the expressway. It was all tied together. So when we saw that $3 million sitting there for an improvement revolving fund that had been set aside towards the industrial, sewer and water for the airport along the eastern side, we checked with legal counsel to make sure that it wasn't in a position where it had to be committed to that. Once we made sure that we were allowed to spend it for actual improvements that would benefit residents, that is where that 90,000, so we decommitted it. We're not using it for providing sewer and water for industrial expansion along the airport, which would then lead to the additional on and off ramps. And instead, this $90,000 was brought up as an idea because the pathway fund is pretty much depleted to then restore what had been taken down and keep up with the beautification and also as safety along Cascade Road, because there's very little we can do as far as adjusting speed limits, although there is some evidence that suggests that when you've got a tree-lined street, people naturally drive slower than when it's wide open. So just to give residents the background on where the funding came from this, we're not taking tax dollars currently, $90,000, and putting it towards planting trees. We're taking the money that the previous board had put towards, from the sewer and water hookup, the connection fees that the township gets, and we're actually putting improvements towards the township that benefits residents. Hopefully that clarifies it. And it's along the lines of what you were suggesting, Mr. Lee, where you go through with a fine tooth comb to see where everything is going. Trustee Rizzi.
I had a question. I noticed in here and I think you mentioned it too, but it references Wycliffe to Cahoon, but then it also references 36th Street to Cahoon. And I guess I'm curious specifically where the trees are going, because I know that the section of pathway that was most recently built was 36th Street to Cahoon. So are there trees going between Wycliffe and 36th Street also, or is it just from 36th Street to Cahoon?
It's that section. So the section of the trail on the kind of east side of Cascade Road through there that has no trees in the right-of-way section.
Right.
It does include planting. This bid that is included in here included some trees within that area as well.
Okay.
So it goes back to the beautification part of.
All right.
Yeah, so you're between Wycliffe all the way down to Whitneyville. The majority are 36th Street to Whitneyville, because that's
Understood.
mostly what was affected.
And
Truthfully,
mostly
would have
where-
put more trees in there north of 36, but it gets difficult with the curb, with the
Right.
sidewalk. And the idea was to provide as best as possible, kind of a lead into the village. But truthfully, it's very hard to get trees. There's not enough space north of 36th Street to do much.
That's part of the reason I was asking. so
And
that
if you
makes
get to
sense.
the west side of Cascade Road, north of there's water main, so it's tricky to you have to dodge that even when there is space on the west side.
I know township staff, when that section of the path was built, from 36th Street to Cahoon, there was a lot of discussion and negotiation with those neighbors in that process, because the road was getting widened also, and they knew that at the time. And the township had assured them that they would be coming back later to put trees in, so this is right in line with what former staff had promised a lot of those people, so I'm glad that we're following through. So I appreciate you guys bringing it up tonight.
I heard
The-
that too
the-
from
yeah.
prior staff, but I'm not sure why they didn't do that.
The other part too is when we, in the budget process, when we talked about the $90,000. One, this was originally budgeted in 2024's budget, so if anybody looks back and thinks we spent it in 2024, we did not.
Right.
As part of our budget amendments at the end of the year, we had not spent that money, so then we re-budgeted it into 2025. And we did talk about, it's not just that section of Cascade Road. There's other sections in the township that could use some trees, just as part of the beautification. And, it's why we all moved to Cascade, is it's got nice trees, greenery. So this would also hopefully add to some other places within the township as well.
Trustee Shipley?
In as much as these trees, a species, have been recommended by the state. And also in conjunction with the guidance from Kent County Road Commission. And the fact that it may be a slowing factor for traffic. And lastly, but not least important, it's a promise that was made to the residents. I make a motion that we approve the award for a 3-year contract for the tree plantings.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordike, to approve the award of the 3-year contract for township tree planting as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 013-2025. Consider approval of resolution for authorizing depositories for township funds. I believe we have Finance Director Nenderini virtually, who can walk us through this.
Good evening again, Supervisor, Board, Township Manager, Lorna Nencherini, your Finance and Budget Director. As the RBA states, this is an annual resolution. If you look around agendas for municipalities around the state this time of year, everybody's doing this. Before I get into the details of what this is doing, please, no disrespect was intended on the capitalization used in the RBA, section 41.77 of the revised statutes of 1846 use that capitalization or non-capitalization, so I went with it. If we get back to business, the second page has the list of depositories that the township is either actively using or would consider to use. And I say that because these are not just savings or checking accounts. They are also certificates of deposit. Some folks would consider a CD as an investment as they are written, and because they are insured through the FDIC, they are a bank or depository product. So I'm here for questions.
Discussion, questions? Motions?
I just have one comment in case, I'm sure nobody went back to last year, or years previous to see how this was handled. But in years past, this was not done as a formal resolution, and under the executive summary, Finance Director included why we should be making this as a formal resolution, just in case anybody noticed and in case anybody wants some reading.
So this would be the first time we're doing it properly as the resolution, correct?
Correct.
Manager Smith, any additional comments or is
No, I have nothing else.
there a motion?
Shipley makes a motion to take care of this housekeeping issue and make it official according to the state of Michigan. So I make a motion to approve the resolution for authorizing depositories of the township funds.
Support.
So motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordike to approve the resolution authorizing depositories for township funds as presented. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
trustee Shipley,
Yes.
trustee Rissy,
Yes.
trustee Nordike,
Yes.
treasurer Corrston.
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes, Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes, motion carried. Last item of new business, item 014-2025. Consideration of resolutions to approve or amend elected officials' compensation adjustments. There's the memo in the packet, but before we turn this over to Manager Smith, just wanted to say that our brief background, the township has been doing internal compensation study to make sure we're on par but not overpaying just for township employee positions. But that would not be appropriate for Board of Trustee positions, as the Board of Trustees is the only body that sets the elected official's salary and including Manager Smith's salary. So the board delegates everyday operations, including staff salary, primarily to the manager, but this is one thing we can't delegate. So the appropriate place to discuss this is publicly and by the people who can make that decision, which would be us. With that, Manager Smith, could you walk us through your memo? And also go over then after that, as far as the ranges and the different comparables, also then the different processes that a board can do to adjust the salary.
Yes. So I'll unfold the first part of that first. As the supervisor said, we're going through a compensation study at the township for all employees, fire included. And that did not include the elected officers or elected officials of the township. So in meeting with the officers, which we do on a regular basis, which is the clerk, supervisor, and treasurer, it came up and it said that we should investigate this. So I got together with Katie Moraski, who's here tonight, our HR director, and we started to look at all of the elected officials' salaries and pay throughout the county. Before we go into a lot of the meat, it's really hard to compare apples to apples when you're talking about communities, because no community is set up the same. Some elected officials work full-time, some work part-time, some have, like, their clerk could work full-time, but the other two officers work part-time. Some have city managers or township managers and some don't. So it's really hard to compare apples to apples, but what we did is we narrowed it. The first chart that you have in your RBA shows all the townships in Kent County with the appropriate salaries that we were able to obtain. We looked at those and we said, okay, we need to narrow that down because there was no way to compare all of those townships. So we narrowed it down to, I believe, 6 or 8 within each category. And we looked at population, SEV.
SEV means what? Sorry, just to,
State equalized value. So your taxable value of your community.
which means what? Property value, right?
Property value, yes. Whether the positions were full-time or part-time status, and then some shared characteristics and resources. I think Cascade tends to identify them or put themselves in a category with Ada or Grand Rapids Township, East Grand Rapids. So we tried to look at like communities that have the like characteristics. So your first table shows you all of the elected official salaries within Kent County. Your second table shows you the overall ranking. So if I just ranked across the board, it shows you where the salaries set within each category: the clerk, the supervisor, the treasurer, and then the trustee. And then we broke it down from that point. We then broke it down into the like-minded communities. We've got a table for the supervisor, a table for the treasurer, a table for the clerk, and a table for the trustee. We went through, ranked them amongst those 8. I think it's 8, looks like 9, and then did a top 3 average and then an overall average. And took those, came up with a range that we think would be something to consider. Definitely not making a recommendation. I wrote recommendation there, but I really can't recommend what the pay should be. But we made a suggestion of what a range could be for all of the positions. Do you want me to go right into how we should move forward with this, or do you want to
Oh,
have
it
more
doesn't matter.
discussion?
So the findings, it's.
I can go through the rankings if you want.
That would be helpful.
Okay. So with the supervisor, when you look at the like communities, the supervisors ranged out of the 9 communities, 8 out of the 9.
So
8,
hold on, so go to that second table
yes.
where you've got all townships in Kent County with overall ranking
Oh.
of wage largest to smallest.
Mhm. Yes, so the clerk, supervisor, and treasurer rank near the bottom. Looks like 5th or 6th from the bottom out of all of the communities. And then the trustees rank at the very top amongst all of the townships within Kent County. And again, this is just data that we pulled. It's been set like this for years. So I don't know how it originated the way that it did. This is just interpreting the data. And I apologize, I don't actually have the number on here as to how many communities
And for
in Kent County.
for population, it looks like we're 4th from this, 4th highest populated.
Yes,
State equalized value, which is basically property values, which is kind of like how much it costs to live in your
mhm,
area. We're the highest in the entire,
yes. Cascade actually has the highest property values in the entire county with the exception of Grand Rapids, Kentwood, and Wyoming.
which are both cities.
Yes.
Part-time versus full-time, we're looking at part-time, correct?
Mhm. I will state that the treasurer is full-time in Ada, so is the clerk in Ada and Grand Rapids Township. But again, they have some unique circumstances that set them apart from how Cascade staffs and runs our operations.
And you put the FT note in
I did.
things.
So, as I stated, there's no true comparison as each community is unique, but those are the following ranges that if you look at the averages, where they fall. The way to move forward with this is if there's consideration, desire from the board to approve an increase, there are 4 attached resolutions. Each resolution has to be voted on separately. And those are all included in there. And the reason that they are blank is because we did not recommend a fixed number.
And all this information is at the end of this packet, including all these tables. Can you talk about too, I know Attorney Homier, you would know more details, but so the board can do this publicly in front of, at a public meeting. And then there's another way to do it too, where you can, the board would then appoint certain people of their choosing to do it, set that salary for them, and then take it out of the board's hand.
Yes, it's a elected officials compensation commission that can be created by this board. And you said it right, Supervisor, we would appoint 5 people. They would meet every odd year, and then they would be the ones responsible for setting the salaries,
And
recommending the salaries.
And the board chooses the people to appoint. In theory, I could appoint my husband.
That's a question for the attorney.
I mean, as long as they're a taxpayer resident, right? I'm not saying it's a good look at all. I'm trying to show that if we could shirk the responsibility off to somebody else.
Might not be able to support that appointment.
Yeah.
So the compensation commission is established by resolution of the board. And then members are appointed. There's only a limited number of days that they can meet in those odd numbered years. And then they determine what the compensation will be, which becomes the compensation unless it's rejected by the board within 30 days of filing with the township clerk. So it would require the board to affirmatively reject that once established and filed.
So by doing nothing, the board can allow that time to lapse and it takes effect without the board having to make the decision itself.
Correct. Yeah, the determination itself is made by the compensation commission. So you have 2 choices at that point. You either accept it by not do anything, or you reject it. It's not like you can redetermine what it might be. So if you reject it, then the prevailing compensation at the time stands going forward until such time in 2 years, in the odd number of years that they would meet again.
And just to add, as if with every other board and commission, we would have a staff liaison. This would probably be under the purview of the HR director, and they would assist this commission every odd year with gathering data, probably similar to what we have here, but whatever the commission requested, we would work with them and so they could make a determination.
Trustee Shipley?
Yeah. For my 2 cents worth, I like things done out in public. That's number one importance. Number two, as we've seen in several other government agencies, they tend to layer more and more commissions and committees in there. And I think that number one adds to the confusion. And number two, it's easier to hide stuff. So I would prefer that we not go the commission route and that we have it out in public as a board.
Trustee Norton?
And I agree with Mr. Shipley that the residents elected us to make the difficult decisions in this township. And I'm not gonna hide behind the skirt of a committee for this. This is something that we need to do. It's not popular, but it needs to be done.
Trustee Shipley?
I'm looking at these charts that were put together. And what looks to me to be fair is that the 3 executives that are in question of adjusting their salary. It's not unusual for them to be brought up to the same place as where Cascade Township is on the average. Quite frankly, if anybody has ever spent any time up in the offices, they'll notice a couple faces up there on a regular basis, almost a daily basis. That's like the county commissioner that's assigned to us. You don't see him sitting at home. He's out and about doing what he's supposed to. As far as I'm concerned, looking at this, I'm overpaid. And I'm willing to give it back to the township. Because I never expected to be paid at this level when I put out my petition for election. But I don't spend the time in the office as the township officers, and I'll name them, the supervisor, the treasurer, and the clerk spend. Anybody want to go around election time? Go see what Sue Slater is doing. She's not sitting at home watching a soap opera. And when it comes to making sure that every penny is accounted for, you don't see the treasurer down at her normal job where she gets a paycheck. She's working with this guy and also with our wonderful financial director. Thank you. So there's my 2 cents worth.
I was really surprised to see that I think all of you trustees are great. It's just funny because it's telling how it was set up before under the previous leadership. 169%.
That's way too much for what I do.
But it's also, I knew the officers was quite low. I didn't realize it was this low, but it's also telling that based on how they used to run things with the 4 subcommittees behind the scenes and the old personnel finance director of that, or the chair of that committee, that the officers who have statutory duties and responsibilities are so similar to the trustees, meaning that officers are so low and the trustees are so high. I think you trustees are worth it and you're fantastic. I just think it's telling for how things were done in the past.
It was a trustee calling the shots on that committee.
I know. Hence the 169% overage of the average. 50% more than the next highest. But that being said, you guys are great. It wasn't you guys, so I don't think anyone needs a cut. I think the officers are grossly underpaid compared to what the averages are, and especially considering our township's population and the cost of property in our township. The clerk, the treasurer, and the supervisor position are embarrassingly low. And the only question I have is who'd be stupid enough to work this hard for such a low amount of pay, but.
I also think you need to look at what would happen if, unfortunate if one of our officers had to relocate for a job or family and or had health issues. How are we gonna go out and replace you guys with these low wages when everybody else around us is higher? So that's something to look at too.
Well, I don't want it to be done how it was in the past, where you have low wages, but then you've got the former supervisor who created a DBA under a different name to sell his goods to the township at an 80% markup, and nobody knew about it because he had created a DBA known as,
Well, I want the best and the brightest. I don't want Fruit Loops.
I
So
agree.
you're gonna have to pay for what you get.
Question for Michael Muir, the attorney. We need to vote on each position separately, correct?
Correct.
Best practices or what's required,
I
so
say
do we
each one.
rescind?
So if we're talking about,
Or recuse?
if we're talking about the clerk, supervisor and treasurer by resolution, yes, those are separate then. And then the trustees could be done as a group because it's one that.
For the person who's sitting in the position that we're voting on, is it proper, or is it necessary for that person, the officer or the trustee, to recuse him or herself?
Not generally, sometimes it happens where a member doesn't want to vote on it. But charter townships are a little different than general law townships. So, once you're called present, as part of the roll call, you have an obligation to vote on matters unless, given unanimous consent by the rest of the members present.
What about, is there like for any position, or any voter, any officer or trustee to vote on his or her salary based on the position that they occupy? Is that a conflict of interest?
No, probably not. Because the salary actually belongs to the office, not the person. Like you can't even reject you can't give it back. You'd have to take it, because again, it belongs to the office.
I guess I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve the salary adjustments to $43,000 for our township treasurer.
Wait, do we have to
Oh.
do, sorry,
All right.
Yeah, so do each resolution separately by motion and vote.
Okay.
I have a separate.
okay.
So Shipley supports.
So this is for the treasurer, motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by trustee Shipley, to adjust the position of Cascade Township treasurer to $43,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that would be in the form of a resolution. So clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Treasurer Corsange.
Yes.
Trustee Nordike.
No.
Trustee Rissy.
No.
Trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook.
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. Motion carried.
Now I'd like to make a motion for a salary adjustment in the amount, a total amount of $43,000 for our township clerk.
Support.
That's a motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by treasurer Corsange, to adjust the Cascade Township clerk salary to $43,000. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook.
Yes.
Treasurer Corsange.
Yes.
Trustee Rissy.
No.
Trustee Nordike.
No.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. And I just want to say, with those adjustments, you guys still are not looking to see where you're at.
So one more, motion, I move to approve the salary in a total amount of $48,000 for our township supervisor.
Second.
So I just want to make clear, so the public knows and you know, these are motions to adopt the resolutions and set those salaries at that amount. You have in front of you those three resolutions.
With the blanks, so we'd be filling in the
Right.
blanks.
That's correct.
You have the numbers to fill in that blank.
That's right.
Motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by clerk Slater.
Shipley. Oh, no, it was you, Sue.
It was you?
That was the previous one.
Oh, yeah, that one, yeah.
To approve, or to, excuse me, to adjust the supervisor's salary to 48,000. Is that correct?
Right.
Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Treasurer Corsange.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook.
Yes.
Trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Trustee Nordike.
No.
Trustee Ritchie,
No.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes. Yes. Motion carried 5-2.
We have to do trustees.
Trustee. Does anyone have a motion for trustee?
I might as well.
Want me to make the motion?
No, I got it. I'll make a motion to adjust the salaries for the township trustees to remain the same as they currently are.
Do we need a resolution for that, Mike?
No, well, you don't even need the motion if you're gonna leave it untouched.
I'm moving them colors.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's. You can't decrease it during the term of office either, and so. It could
Oh, you're not
only-
even allowed to?
No,
Oh, well
not at
then,
this point, not during the term.
You can do it
could
for the next one.
Yeah, you could do it now, it wouldn't be effective for 4 years.
But we don't need to do anything. If
You
it-
don't need to do anything.
We're done.
well, I want to go
Just
on
to-
record saying that you trustees are great and also the reason that you're 169% over the average trustee's salary in the county is not because of your own doing, but the previous, a couple trustees that sat here before you. So
I just
we
want to be,
appreciate your work.
I just want to make it clear that the resolution was included for trustees because I didn't want to presume what was going to happen.
Well done.
Fair enough. Okay, is there additional comments or business on this item? Manager Smith?
I have a question. It has been discussed briefly in regards to the LOCC. So if that is something that the board wishes to establish, then that is something that I can start working with legal counsel on in regards to establishing that. But it sounds like there was not an interest.
Not by me.
You mean the separate
You've
commission?
been put here to do the tough job. So I'm not gonna hide behind the committee.
Don't need another layer of smoke.
I'd say, we're all really hardworking and this is not the highest paid. I think this is in range and frankly overdue and you ladies deserve it. Yes, you deserve it too. Having no further new business items, public comments, Article 11, anything, whether it's on tonight's agenda or not. Please state your name and address for record keeping.
Hi, my name is Molly Webb. I live at 6799 Burton Street Southeast. Sorry, I'm very sick right now. So apologize for my shaky voice. In reference to the amendment, chapter 282, specifically Burton Park, I'd like to understand how the township feels they can unilaterally make decisions that impact a shared 50-50 driveway easement.
We can answer during board comments.
Yeah. Are you able to answer that?
Yeah, I said we can
Oh, yeah.
answer, respond during board comments.
Board comments come later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
There's Troy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you
Trish.
Supervisor Lesperance for the opportunity for public comment. My name is Walter Bujak. I live at 6639 Thornapple River Drive. And I'm also your Kent County Commissioner for District 21. The purpose for my public comment tonight is to welcome the new trustees to the Township Board. I really do believe you are going to be value-adding members to a already Super Bowl quality Township Board of Trustees. So I'm looking forward to great things happening here at the Township. I do attend these meetings and I have promised to the trustees that I am not here in an official capacity with the county to interfere with the business of Cascade Township, but here to gather information and simply remain informed. I like to know what's going on in my district, and the best way to do that is to come to these meetings. And just wish you well. And if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Dion.
Good evening, Jeff Dion, 2984 Thornapple River Drive. I think it was a very smart move to bring the budgets up like you did tonight. I know it's a tough subject to raise incomes of the members here, but we need to keep it in line with what's going on in roles such as yours. So I'm very supportive of what happened. Thank you. If we were to hire consultants or bring in outside people to do your job or make up the hard work that you dedicate, and that goes for every one of you on the board. I know the time involved that you take in the community. So thank you for doing that. But I think that it brings it to a level that it needed to be at. So that was a good move. I liked hearing about the trees. That's interesting because when we redid Thornapple River Drive in front of my house, they took out 20, 30 trees. Those trees were never replaced. I know it was a big bone of contention with all the neighbors, including myself. I had 7 trees in front of my house removed, and they were all 20 to 30-inch trees. Those trees are a buffer between traffic. And I bring that up today because I texted Mr. Timmy. I sat in my office today all day from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And from 9:30 to 4:30, all I heard was, "Rrrr." My whole house shakes. I'm so upset about this truck braking. They're hauling dirt in front of our house. It's nonstop all day long. I can hardly talk on my phone. Love to have you come and stand in front of my new garage and feel the impact of that traffic. Thornapple River Drive in front of Tassel Park. And I know Mr. Ken Carey has talked about this. It's never really bothered me until the last couple weeks. I don't know if they're hauling dirt to Ada or what they're doing, but my whole house shakes all day long and I can hardly talk on the phone. And all I hear is my wife complaining about it. Tried to get her up here tonight, but we had another activity with the kids. Grace can understand that. But we have to get Thornapple River Drive off of this truck route. Tim gave me some great advice to go to the Kent County. I'm happy somebody was here from Kent County. I don't know if the road commission has meetings. If I could just request more information from you, Grace, to help guide myself and the neighbors, I'm sure I can put together a good group of them to go find out what's going on. But it's just above and beyond what anybody would tolerate. It's not a Cascade Road or a 28th Street. And we really need to make some adjustments. I'm worried about my safety and just the noise level is not appropriate. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, but yeah, thank you for taking Tuffy down. That's a great improvement in the neighborhood. I loved everybody at Tuffy. Those were a bunch of hardworking guys that were doing a great service in our community. And I know, having taken my vehicles there, a lot of people did. We're going to miss Bobby and his group there. You know, I know great things are coming, but we need to make sure that we have those types of businesses remain in our community and have areas and zoning that are appropriate for those, just like we would apartments and condominiums and single family homes. I still will always say at these meetings that we really need to look at zoning to bring in more single family homes and that full property ladder, because we are needing homes. And as a person that built 105 homes this year in other communities, I'm doing about 100 in Wyoming, the reserve of Wyoming for Century Communities. I know how important it is to bring homes and how needed they are. We build a home and we sell it immediately because the home demand here in Grand Rapids is incredible. So whatever that home is, an apartment, a condo, a single family home, a farm, whatever it is, we need more of that. Please support that and do what you can to help that zoning bring in stuff that works with the community that we're all living in and love to build. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got 2 things. Ken Vanderkark, 7200 Layton. Have we got 7 parks? Is that what we have now? Is that, how many have we designated as?
I think there's 7, yes.
Right, there's a little piece of property right at the dam. There used to be a picnic table out there.
You talking about the lot that the township bought maybe 10 or so years ago on Thornapple River Drive with the.
It's right at the dam,
Mhm.
across from the park, across from Tassel Park, on the upside of the dam.
On Thorncrest.
On
Oh,
Thorncrest.
Put the damn
Got it.
parking lot on Thorncrest.
got it.
There's a nice little piece of property in there. There used to be a picnic table in there. And it's gone. Can we designate that as a park and put a picnic table up there? I take the little neighbor kid bass fishing over there and we stand there and cast. It'd be nice if we had a table to set a box on or something, but is
When
it
did
just
the
a piece of
table-
land?
when
We
did
got
the
another
table
piece of
go away?
land down on the other side that they bought a house and tore it down. Is it a park? Is it just property?
When did
When
that
did the-
picnic table go away? Do you know?
There is no picnic table there. They tore it down.
Oh,
It's
but at-
gone.
But at some point there was.
There was.
I think a tree fell on it a number of years ago and it was not replaced, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong.
Was it
but-
the dam operator though? I think it might have been the dam operator who placed it there.
No,
The point of
no,
entry
the
now.
township put
Was
put
it
the
town?
table there. they
We
put
can
the
revisit
bollards in,
that.
they Put the
That's-
path to the river there.
It's easy to revisit.
A bench or two or a table would be nice. If we could get, do you have to designate it as a park then? Does it have to be voted on? This is a park or this is just township
Well,
property?
not every township parcel has to be designated as a park. So if you use it to fish, it doesn't have to be a park.
No, I know. I was told I could go over there and fish.
Well, any public property you have access to.
Right.
And donate some benches and a table over there. We'd be thrilled.
But we can look at that.
I
too.
pulled enough weeds to,
Yeah.
to fill that park full.
I misunderstood
So
your comment.
I guess if you want,
You are very.
It's your volunteer hour.
Yeah.
okay. And, we had the road commission here, what was it, the last meeting or meeting before? And I caught him in the hallway out here and asked him about getting a sign because we have the ordinance, we just don't have the signs up. And he says, I don't know anything about not having a sign. And he was gonna get together with Jade. Has he gotten back with you?
No, he is not.
So we,
I remembered I spoke with you, I think, last week.
at the fire department, and I asked you about it and you said, no, he hadn't. So can we get a hold of the township
Yeah, we can get a hold of
and
Jerry.
get some signs? Cause they're saying they don't know anything about wanting
Mhm.
This is the
Jake break
Jake
signs
break.
up. So somebody's not going
Well,
through or somebody's saying they have, somebody's saying
Well,
they
I
haven't.
don't want to assume who said, well, I'll talk about it during. my
Just
comments.
find out and let's get a signs up because it's noisy. Thank you.
We were told we couldn't have. Jake breaks on.
Eric, is it fair to say that the sign placement along public roads falls under the authority of the road commission, not the township?
Jurisdiction of the road owner, which is
I can
county road
go through it in my
commission.
comments.
Okay.
At the meeting here, he said, we have to get a cop out there then to start issuing tickets instead of putting up the signs. If we issue a ticket and there's no sign up, how do they know that there is an ordinance? You have to post an ordinance out like that, or they can drive right on through there and say, well, we didn't know it. So one is saying against the other. So we either have to contract more cops or put up a sign.
We'll look, yeah, we can discuss this and look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing it up.
I have spent the last 4 years in talking 3 minutes. I go to many meetings. I've gone 5 years of school boards, county meetings, state meetings, Lansing meetings. My life can be, I can do a speech in 3 minutes, like with my eyes closed. I'm here as a business owner. So I talked before as a personal resident and taxpayer. I'd like to share with you from a business owner. There's probably not been too many businesses that have been severely affected in revenue than my business in the B1 district. The B1 district, living in the B1 district as a business is a great cost to me. You make a change, affects my business. The township many years ago acquired through public domain one of my lots, and that's how this old 28th Street got that Y into it. So I lost property value there. Then the property, the Y turn made it almost impossible to make a left-hand turn because there was no reactionary time between the people at a rolling stop in the Y and getting on my driveway. So the township said, oh, we messed up. So they tried to straighten that out to create more of a reactionary time. and try to slow the traffic down on 28 on Cascade Road by creating pinch points. And we actually exacerbated the problem. Now we have racing cars down 28th Street, and it's almost impossible to get and make a left on my turn. When you do bridge, I'm not here to complain because I'm all about progress. Okay, that's why I look at but every decision made has pros and it has consequences. My business has been so affected. So when you make changes, you might want to consider talking to people that it affects the most. When you did the bridge change and add the guardrail, I'm not disagreeing that we shouldn't do the guardrails. So I don't want to say that we shouldn't do that. But I will tell you that that absolutely shut my business down for 60 days. The cones were there. It was too dangerous and it was too much of a liability. So I had to lay off my employees. I said, you can't work here because I did not want to be responsible for somebody dying of getting T-boned by somebody going 60 miles an hour down Cascade Road. Okay. So I was okay with that. I mean, I'm not arguing one way or the other, but every decision has consequences too. And when you live in the B1 district, you might want to talk to the people that get affected most by all these changes and all the beautification process. You know, Tuffy Muffler, for example, that has always been an eyesore. And when the designers come in and do renditions first, they always paint over and put a facade on it so it looks better on paper than it ever does. And so but that particular filled a void. Okay, the clientele went there, and many of my employees are young students, and their muffler falls off. Okay, you go to and we have wonderful places. We have Verberg's and Quality and O'Neill's, which I patronage all of them, but I can afford it. So I go down there and get a muffler, 2,000 hours. Everything's 2,000 hours anymore to fix a car. I don't know what it is. That's the magic number. It used to be, well, Tuffy Muffler served a younger audience that couldn't afford $2,000. Okay. Bobby would say to him, would say to him, and he wasn't even the owner. Okay. I talked to the owner recently. Okay. He would say, well, what is your budget? I've got 200 hours. He said, well, I can make that work and get you by for a year and a half. He served a need that we do not have anymore. Okay. So as much as of an eyesore it was, young people who drive cars, can't afford $2,000. I mean, they're just like we were when we were going to school and college, they're on a budget. Okay. And things become very expensive. So again, there's always consequences to decisions that are made. It served a niche, yet it was an eyesore that we've been talking about in Cascade Township here for, I can't tell you how long. Every conversation for 15 years has been what that looked like. Okay. So just maybe if you're making changes, it's going to affect the B1 district, might want to just talk to people ahead of time and give us heads up. And I am involved, so I know about these things. I read about them, but I may give you a different perspective that you didn't think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Scott Van Solkema. Just to clarify, the trustees and clerk and supervisor, you guys don't get any benefits, right? Okay, so no benefits, no vacation, no sick time, no 401k, no nothing, just the straight pay?
There's a retirement
Okay,
for all the board.
but it's not like a pension or anything.
Is
No,
in
it's
fact
like-
a defined pension, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a defined
Okay.
pension,
It's a DC.
yeah, defined contribution. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
defined contribution, not defined benefits for pension.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's fine, but not healthcare or anything like that. Okay, so good. So getting a raise is fine. I do have a question about the park on 282-3 park activities for Leslie Tassel Park. Specifically says this shall include picnics and gatherings in the pavilion areas, hiking, fishing, and other events as approved or specifically permitted by the township board or township staff. But then when you actually go to 282-6, hunting and fishing, it says fishing shall be permitted in Cascade Charter Township Park. That's it. And Leslie Tassel Park is crossed out. So can you fish at Tassel Park? Because at the new rendering of the thing, of the park redo, you even have fishing. What is it called here? Fishing.
Scott, that was to remove that,
Fishing
so it
pier.
applies to all parks. So
Any park where you can fish, you can fish. If there's no water, you can't fish.
Okay, but it specifically says there 282-3 fishing and hunting,
Supposed
and
to figure
I
they
understand
were
that, but
removing
No, it's-
Leslie Pat Tassel, so it could apply to all parks.
you have in there specifically Cascade Recreation Park.
What page is this, Scott? Do you know?
It's, I
Red line I saw was removing the reference to Leslie Tassel Park so that it could apply to all parks.
don't know what page it is, 282-6. I screenshot it.
Back at the park.
Yeah, I know there's a little pond at Rec Park, and then obviously you can fish on the river, but I mean, it just seems a little.
I can address that in my comments too.
Okay. Also regarding housing and things of that nature, again, the township does sit on a lot of land. There's some land. I know it's landlocked in a whole nother neighborhood. There's also the two parcels that I've talked numerous times about on 2800 and 2804 Thornapple River. There's also a parcel on Tanglewood. There's a large parcel off of Whitneyville and 60th. That's like, 2 acres. So if we're looking for possible some money, if needed be, we can always sell land. We're not making more of it. As I've said before, the first house after the Camelback Bridge, it sold for $815,000 and somebody bulldozed it to build another house. You guys are sitting on land that when this new master plan or village redevelopment was the presentation that was here back in November, I believe, or October, those two parcels that are owned, 2800 and 2804 Thornapple River, weren't included in any of that. So I'm still asking not everyone on this board was on this board when those parcels were purchased, but they've been purchased for sitting there for 9 years. And in that time, two other parcels have come up for sale in between Cascade Road and them, and they were not bought. So please sell them and get them back on the tax rolls. People want to live here and are willing to pay stupid money for it. I don't know why, but they are. So thank you. $815,000 to buy a house and then tear it down. So they'd love to buy a vacant lot. Thank you.
Does anyone have a problem or opposed to, since we have the closed session, moving the manager comments and the board comments up above that so that people don't have to wait around until we're done with closed session? Or is that weird?
I'd make a motion to move Article 13 and Article 14 of the agenda ahead of Article 12.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so doing that, we'll bring up now the time for manager comments and board comments to make publicly, and that allow people to listen to those without having to wait for us to go back into closed session. Back. So Article 13, manager comments.
I'm just going to go in order of, I don't have any updates myself, but I'll go in order some of the questions that were asked tonight. And I apologize for my voice. I think I'm getting sick as well. Something's going around. In regards to the park hours and how we can change the ordinance and how we can unilaterally change, all I can say is legal counsel was consulted and taken into consideration the court order that the township does have. So what we had before tonight was passed through our legal counsel. In regards to the truck traffic on Thornapple River Drive, that came up a couple of times. I just want to clarify that who we spoke with in the past was, I believe, the traffic engineer at the Kent County Road Commission. Who we had here, who you spoke with, was the director of the Kent County Road Commission. So clearly there was some communication breakdown at the county. We will follow up with Jerry. He was here. He did have the conversation, I believe, with you, Ken, and we will follow up on those signs. But just wanted to be clear that we were talking to two different people. Usually when you have a traffic concern, you go to a traffic engineer. That's usually how that works. So, but we had Jerry here going over the road projects. It was appropriate and we talked to him at that point. In regards to, I think the next item was fishing. I just want to explain what's in the packet. So the ordinance was introduced at the January 22nd meeting. There were changes that were requested. What you see crossed out was in the original version. And it says that fishing shall be permitted in Cascade Charter Township parks, plural. Leslie Tassel Park was the only park included before. So that has been crossed out to include all parks where applicable. I mean, obviously you can't fish if there's no water. So Tassel Park was in the original version. It was taken out to include all parks. Are you looking on your iPhone? Okay. I don't know if it doesn't show up on the app or what.
It's underlined, not crossed out.
Okay, then that's your phone. I'm sorry.
Looking at my screen, that's exactly how it says.
It's crossed out. I can show you after the meeting if you'd like to see it.
No,
So, I believe that I think those were the questions that came up tonight that I have answers for. I don't know if I missed anything. Okay.
Board comments, trustee Shipley.
As always, the group out here is getting larger by the month. I love it. I love all the input that you have, whether we agree with your input or take actions that you don't agree with. I'm sorry, we're a growing township. We're trying to do the best for the residents as a whole. So everybody that's here, thank you for coming out. And anybody that's on the internet, thanks for viewing it. That's all I have.
Trustee Nordhook.
Nordike.
Knock it off.
Wally, thank you for coming as our county commissioner. I think you are by far the most accessible county commissioner. And just, Wally shows up for little meetings and it's awesome. I do have an ask for you in front of everyone though. To my knowledge, the airport board is chosen by the county. And I don't think we have a Cascade resident on it. And I would humbly submit our supervisor, who I think would be a wonderful contributing member to the airport board. So I don't know if you have any input on that. It would be awesome to have her on that board.
Did you get selected, Wally? Because I know you had requested to be on that airport authority. It's odd because they have multiple county commissioners on it, but then the county commissioner that represents the area in which the entire airport sits is not chosen to be on that authority. Seems weird. Seems like they'd want to hear the input.
Can you
From the
hear the
actual-
railroad train?
Huh?
Can you hear the railroad train?
It's really weird that they wouldn't want the commissioner that represents the area the airport sits to serve on the airport.
Or the
authority.
supervisor that represents the township. That
Or
they
an
report
an
to.
elected official of the township. Strange, but they want 4 on and off ramps to support their industrial development along the eastern side. That seems like that'd be something that they'd want to flush out with the residents that live here and pay taxes,
Engagement, partnership.
rather than filing lawsuits. It's weird. Trustee Rizzi.
I'd just like to comment that the approved park rules are as Jade says. It is, that is what we talked about, and I'm sorry if you don't have the same version we do in front of you, but fishing is allowed at the park, so you don't need to worry about that. And I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out in the snow tonight to see us. It is it's better to have people in the room than to sit here by ourselves. So we like the comments. We like when people show up. Thank you.
For the most part, right, usually.
It's exciting.
I'm teasing, trustee Nordhook.
No comments.
Clerk Slater. Treasurer Corson.
No comment.
Supervisor Les Brents. I'm not trying to avoid your comment or your question, Ms. Webb. I'm just not sure if why the township thinks it has a right to make decisions about a public easement that is shared with, I'm assuming you. The public easement. I would disagree with that. I think the entrance to Burton Park is public, at least half of it. And that would be, I would say, what we're making decisions about. Me too. Half of that is a public easement.
It's allowed to have public access with parameters around it.
And the residents who live along that, including you and Mr. The guy you're sitting next to, are not allowed, yes, sorry, blank to that, are not allowed to impede the public access to that on that road. So we can talk about it more, but I don't think we're out of line. And legal counsel, we've so I'll just say this, our legal counsel, we've heard we've received all of your concerns and complaints. And we've forwarded everything to our legal counsel, who has looked at it thoroughly and then provided feedback to this board. We're acting on behalf of our legal counsel's directives. We don't agree with your opinion, and we also don't think that the township is out of line at all. So I know that Mr. Blosser sent an attorney letter from his attorney, and it's not public comments anymore. I know, and I disagree with you because it's a public easement. Nope, not public comments. We're not gonna have a dog and pony show screaming at each other.
Working together.
Yep, and you could have talked, Mr. Blosser, you had public comments twice and you didn't choose to talk. So right now, we're in the middle of board comments. Thank you. Jam and Bean, I appreciate your comments, and I also heard from another business owner across the street from you who, when we did those previously 10 or so years ago, when the township redid those intersections, when they specifically Cascade and Thornapple River Drive, to kind of beautify those, he lost $100,000 in business. And luckily he was able to stay afloat because at the time interest rates were so low, he could get a loan for nominal interest rates. So I appreciate the feedback and I think it's important. Mr. Van Solkema, the township sits on a bunch of land. I think I would clarify that. That's something that we've talked about. We can add more information about, but a lot of that stuff, I don't think we do sit a lot on land, and a lot of the stuff that comes off is little tiny scraps or pieces that developers don't want to pay taxes on. So when they're done, they turn that little tiny scrap over to the township. So generally, as far as public owned land in the township, I don't think we have any very much. Mr. Bujak, we don't have any county parks in Cascade Township, unlike the rest of the townships in the county. And if you could push for that on our end, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Maybe they figure since we have an airport, we don't need a park.
Right. With that, I don't have anything else. So now would be Article 12, closed session. So we need a motion and then a roll call vote to enter closed session.
Make a motion to go to closed session.
Support it.
That's a motion by trustee Rizzi, supported by trustee Nordike, to enter closed session pursuant to MCL 15.243, section 13(1)(g). Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
And MCL.
They're two basics.
Oh,
right?
sorry.
That's right.
And
15.268(1)(h) to discuss a written confidential legal opinion, the disclosure of which is exempt pursuant to state or federal law. And under subparagraph E, to consult with your attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with the Miller v. Cascade Township case, the discussion of which in public would have a detrimental financial effect on your trial or settlement strategy.
Thank you. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordike,
Yes.
trustee Shipley.
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Oh, yes.
treasurer Corsange.
Yes.
Trustee Rissy,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. We are now in closed session.
Shipley makes a motion to return to open session.
Support.
That's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordike, to return to open session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are back in open session. Is there an additional motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Shipley sports.
Motion by trustee Nordike, supported by trustee Shipley, to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
We are adjourned.